Good morning and welcome into Card Central 365 on STL Sports Central. As always, Card Central 365 is brought to you by Gray Bar and STL Sports Central presented by DraftKings. All of our content presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Cardinals coming off of a 10-1 loss yesterday evening. A forgettable one for sure. The last couple have not been pretty. A rough start to the second half. And, we talked about this, or at least I talked about this yesterday and following game one of this series. You're coming off of the All-Star break, right, where you're thinking, okay, you finally had an opportunity for these guys to get some rest. I know you're still going in a little bit banged up with Gorman and Nootbaar, now both of them being on the IL. And all of a sudden, you're thinking, okay, maybe we can get something going here. Has not been the case. 7-3 loss on Friday, a 10-1 loss last night, and now you're sending Miles Mikolas out to try and salvage a Game 3 win. He looked better last time out, but it's no secret that Miles Mikolas has been, in the large part, trending in the wrong direction in the month of July. Grant Salsman is with me. Grant, I know it's frustrating right now. What is your takeaway just from the overall play from yesterday's outing? The Cardinals not able to get a win when Sonny's out there. Let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really give a lot of takeaways when you just play uncompetitive baseball. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're just getting blown out in back-to-back games, there's no real takeaways besides they're not playing well. And I mean, I know that's not high analytical analysis, but that's all you can say, really. They're playing poorly. The pitching's bad. The offense is bad. Mason Wynn's been the only player that looks like he cares really so far. And I don't understand it's back-to-back seasons where they're right there in the mix. Maybe they're doing a little better than expectations, and you come out of the All-Star break with a whimper. And it seemed last year you got swept by the Pirates. This year, if you get swept by the D-backs, who knows? Maybe go lose that series against the Rockies now. In Colorado, things could go from bad to worse. I never thought there was a world where there were buyers. Obviously not anymore. I don't think you've kind of seen what this team is. But also, I still don't think they're going to be sellers. I just don't think they have the means to sell a ton. I mean, obviously, Ryan Helsley could be on the market, but Bill Downtown's already talking about sell. I don't know who you sell that people actually want. Like, do people want Steven Matz? Maybe for pennies on the dollar. Like, that's where I'm at right now is I don't know who you sell besides Helsley that people are interested in.
I think that there's going to be some interest for Ryan Helsley and Phil Maton, perhaps.
Yeah, Maton too, yeah.
For Steven Matz, $11 million is a nice little penny to pay. But at this point, people are more desperate to give up prospects at the deadline for high leverage guys, and Steven Matz has been a high leverage guy. We know that his ability to start games has been solid when he's been healthy, and even this year has been solid when he's been healthy. He just would have to get ramped up. So I think there is something to like about Steven Matz and what he could bring you. Now, is he to the tier that probably Phil Maton and Ryan Helsley are? No. I do agree. You're probably getting pennies on the dollar, or maybe something to that extent. Adam Wells saying that Matz and Maton is a good reliever package. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on. But here's my question that I wanted to bring to you, and this is where I want to get our fan interaction. I want to get your thoughts on this today. I know a lot of you, as Bill already said, have been saying sell for a while. You're over the what you have been seeing from this club for a while. What I want to know is the Cardinals season on the line today, in the sense that if the Cardinals get beat up the way that they have the last couple of days again today, is that going to be enough in your eyes for John Mozeliak to say, yep, it's it. That's it. They've shown me all they need to show me. The reason that I ask that, and you look at the next 10 games, right? Or you look at the first 10 games, going into the All-Star break, you had 3 against Arizona, you had 3 against Colorado, and you had 3 against San Diego, right? So 9 games, right? You look at those first 9, and how Colorado, is Colorado going to tell you anything about this team? Like, if the Cardinals swept the Colorado Rockies, would it tell you more than what getting swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks tells you? No, it wouldn't. So, and then maybe the Padres series could still tell you something, but at this point, you've learned a lot. I feel like about this team and where they are right now. In these 2 games against Arizona, unfortunately, now it's 2 games. Things could change, but how realistic is that? So, I'm not talking, guys, about your own opinions. I'm asking about if you think that for John Mozeliak, this could be the day that it ends up being enough. Now, I know a lot of you are already very much so like, yep, that's it. That is it. But I want to hear your guys' opinion specifically on Mozeliak and if this could be enough today for that to be it. Grant, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that you look at today, win or lose, you're still within 3.5 games in that area. You got to assume you go win that series against the Rockies, at least win 2 out of 3. Maybe you gain a game back. And then I think the real deciding series, that one against the Padres. It's a 4-game set at home against a team you're chasing. If you just fall apart and lose 3 or 4 there, that's when I think you can well and truly say the season's over. And it's good where we're at right now is there's still time. I know people want – I think it's already decided to Bill downtown. But if you're John Mozeliak, you're not selling right now. I know people are saying, let's sell now. It's July 20th. You wait until day or 2 to the deadline, people get more desperate. People are willing to offer a little bit more. You don't want
to the market hasn't set yet.
Exactly. You don't want to push your pieces on the table yet. So that's why it's good, I think, is that you have this big series against the Padres that really is huge and determines where you're going to be in this wild card standings. I mean, you could win today, sweep the Rockies, and you're back to where a half game tied with the Padres, or it could go the other way, and then it could get worse versus the Padres, and that's when people, I think, and John Mozeliak will say, it's over. I mean, they're still in a spot where if they win today and the Padres lose, they didn't lose any games against the Padres or lose ground against the Padres in the wild card standings. So I just don't think that if you're Mozeliak, you're giving up on the season yet.
Which is interesting, right? You because on one hand, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? I mean, it's 3 games, but on the other hand, if the microscope, if the magnifying glass is really on these upcoming games, right, is on these 10 games,
these next 8 games,
Rockies and Padres, then you're looking at these games a little bit deeper, I think, probably than you are most of these games right now, because you're figuring out what you're going to do for the remainder of the season from this point. And the last couple of games have told you anything, it's that the Cardinals are not playing good baseball right now. Sonny Gray yesterday, your best pitcher. This is the guy that when he's on the mound, you're thinking, you have to win. Because the rest of the starting pitching, how much of it can you rely on truly right now? You're not relying on Andre Palante consistently right now because you don't know which version of him you're going to get. You have no idea if Eric Fetty's going to be able to get through 4 innings. Miles Michaelis, it kind of a similar story, right? I know he's coming off a better start, but as mentioned, he's been trending in the wrong direction for the last month. And then Matthew Liberatore, we know the great start of the season that he had, but he's been a little bit more shaky here in the last several in the last couple of months. So, I mean, there's so many question marks. It feels like Sonny Gray has to be the guy that every time he goes out there, you're relying on for a win. And that's how it should be for your ace, or pretty close to. They're still allowed a blow up on the occasion. Yesterday was a big blow up, 3 1/3 innings thrown, 11 hits, 9 runs, 8 of them earned, no walks, 5 strikeouts, 2 home runs allowed. Just not a good outing, and all of it coming early. As mentioned in those first couple innings, the Cardinals were down, I think, 8-0 after. They were down 8-0 after 4, but it was 5-0 after 2. It felt like the game had already been decided, just because with the way that the offense has been rolling along as of late. It kind of felt like the game had already been decided through the first couple of innings.
Well, here's the frustrating thing with the Cardinals in the last 15 games is when games are close, the offense has shown fight. It's shown the ability to battle back. But when you come out and you're down 8-0 before 3 innings have even been completed, it's like, at-bats aren't as competitive. It's not giving up, but there's not that fight anymore that, hey, we're right in it. There's no fight. But we've seen the Cardinals down 2-3 runs, and the offense comes back and fights and finds a way to make the game close. Sometimes the bullpen blows it. But we've seen a lot of comebacks from the Cardinals this season. It's just that the starting pitching's been so bad lately that the offense has no chance to even gain any ground.
And it doesn't get any easier today, as mentioned. Miles Michaelis going out on the mound for St. Louis today. He'll be facing off against Merrill Kelly, 8-5 with a 3.34 ERA. This is a guy that's had a lot of success in his time in Arizona. There's been some rumors that he could be a guy that's on the block. There's a lot of guys potentially that are on this block for Arizona. But you know what? They sweep the Cardinals, and all of a sudden they're back to 500. Who knows? You mentioned that we're not going to know still for a while who ends up doing what, who ends up how the market ends up getting set. Katie Wu, in one of her more recent articles, said that we're not likely to know until the 72-hour mark, until the deadline. So there's still a little bit of time here. And the reason, right, is because teams are still figuring out if they're going to or not. A lot of teams right now are looking at these next handful of games and saying, we're going to make our decision in the next week. The Cardinals being one of them. If you look at Major League Baseball right now, you could probably count up around 20 teams that are still in the mix, undecided as to if they're going to, or that are not all of them not knowing yet, but at least 20 of them in the mix to potentially buy. Let me pull up the standings real quick. Let's do this. Let's roll through it real quick, okay? So we're gonna count the teams that are probably still in it. Cubs for sure. Brewers, yes. Reds, yes. Let's see. I'll go wild card. That makes it a little easier.
Diamondbacks, Cardinals, Reds, Giants, Padres, Mets, Brewers.
Yep, all of them.
The division leaders.
Okay, yep. So Cubs, Dodgers, Phillies, Brewers, Mets, Padres for sure. That's 6. That would be, let's see, Reds, Giants, Cardinals. I'll throw the Diamondbacks in there.
I'll throw the Diamondbacks in
today. That's 10. That's 10 in the National League. Now to the American League. Tigers, Blue Jays, Astros, Yankees, Mariners, Boston, Tampa Bay, yes, they're 5 games over. Texas is a game over. That's 18. And then you can argue the Angels are 2 games under. They're only 4 out.
Yeah.
That would be 19. And it goes even deeper. You could say Cleveland is only 3 out. Is only 3 under.
4.5
out. And the Twins and the Royals are 4 under and 5 under, and they're only 5 and 5.5 out. So they could even potentially be in the mix. That's 22 teams, 21 teams that are still potentially, depending on how the next week goes, could still be in it. Now, obviously, some of those are more likely than others, but it just goes to show that's why the market hasn't set. That's why for the people, why haven't they done anything yet? Or it hasn't set yet. It will set. Give it a few days. Usually right before the deadline is when things really start to pick up. So expect in the final 3 to 4 days before the deadline is when you start really seeing moves consistently come in. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's a lot of question marks still, but the Cardinals definitely not showing positive signs here to start off the second half. He is Grant Salsman. I'm Ethan Hannaford. This is Card Central 365. As always, it is brought to you by Gray Bar. Your distributor for data and electrical datacom needs. Gray Bar does that. And then Card Central 365 and STL Sports Central, always presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Be sure to download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play. $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6. From DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
He is Grant Salsman. I'm Ethan Hannaford. This is Card Central 365 on STL Sports Central. One final game here in this Arizona series. Boy, I tell you what, you look back at the first series against Arizona this year and how electric that was. You could argue that was the peak of the St. Louis Cardinals in 2025. How close all 3 of those games were. One of them being a walk-off. I mean, looking back on that, where they swept the D-backs. And now looking at the team right now on the verge of being swept and feeling like all life is sucked out of them. Boy, you talk about two opposites, Grant.
Yeah, you do. And I don't know. I think I'd argue that those first two games against the Cubs might be the peak of the season so far. But I see your point either way. Yeah, this team looks dead in the water right now. It doesn't look like there's any fight, no motivation to play. And it's disappointing because it's the same exact thing we saw last season. I mean, just the last 7-8 games have just been really, really frustrating. And especially these first two coming out of the All-Star break where you're hoping you're refreshed, you're going to come out hot, give the fans some hope again. And it hasn't happened. And you got to start today because you got an easy series coming up against the Rockies where you can gain some ground back. And today feels like a must win.
Cardinals being outscored 17-4 in their first two games out of the All-Star break. Most definitely not encouraging. You're going to have to get another better start out of Miles Mikolas. We know he's coming off of a semi-decent one in his last, the one prior, right? He looked like he got absolutely blown up by the Chicago Cubs. He's able to make some adjustments in his last one. That one coming against the Nationals. I don't believe he started following that Nationals game. But so you know what? Hopefully you're able to get a better version of Miles Mikolas today. This is a hitter's ballpark, though, in Arizona, and we know that guys have been getting a hold of the Cardinal pitching here the last couple of days. So you hope that Miles Mikolas is able to put a stop to this. You're able to start moving in the right direction. But like I said, I think a lot of people have already set in their minds that it doesn't matter what you see out of this Cardinals team for the next week. They have set in their minds that this team is not a contender. Why would you not sell your pieces at the deadline, being Ryan Helsley, Phil Maton, and Steven Matz, starting with those three, and bringing up some of the depth that you have for the bullpen in AAA for the rest of the year. Yeah. Get Michael McGreevy in there, starting every fifth day, and see what you have the rest of the year. And start build, and not that they haven't been building towards the future, because they have. When you look at the lineup, the offense, it 100% has been building towards the future, excluding Nolan Arenado and Wilson Contreras being in there. I mean, which uncontrollables, no trade clauses, nothing you could do about those. They've been really building towards the future when it comes to the offense, and I've loved what they've done. You understood the situation that they were in going into the season. With the pitching, right? But I don't know how many people still expected at this point for Michael McGreevy to not be in the rotation, at least based off of the fan interaction. It'd be really surprising if he wasn't post-trade deadline. But, man, I tell you what, it kind of seems like this wouldn't, while it would be unfortunate, right, to see maybe the Cardinals fade off here in the last couple of months of the season, there's also a lot of positives because, compared to 2023 after they sold, where you just had a bunch of randos on the roster and you're like, oh my gosh, what are you playing for? That doesn't feel like the case here, right? These guys that you made those trades for, those prospects to acquire in 2023, a lot of them are kind of in the mix now, or at least close to the mix. So, maybe some of them get some time. I know Tekoa Roby's banged up right now on the IL in Memphis, but maybe he heals up and maybe he's able to get a couple of appearances at the end of the there's a lot of questions that if you are to move on from some of those back-end bullpen guys, if you are to move on from a Eric Fetty, from a Miles Mikolas, I don't see that being likely, then you do get some of these young guys to get some opportunity. And all of a sudden, these guys are a little bit more seasoned going into 2026, which is meant to be a year, I think, where you could be talking about the Cardinals competing. Aaron saying, oh, here come the spin of the positives. Earn that check. The Cardinals aren't paying us. We're being realistic here. We're being realistic in the sense that there can still be positives. Not everything has to be negative, even if the Cardinals do sell off. The returns you could be getting could be solid for Ryan Helsley when you look at what top-level bullpen pieces have gotten teams the last couple of years. So that could definitely be a good thing. I would much rather that happen if the Cardinals continue to play at this quality, at this rate. I would much rather them sell off Ryan Helsley than get nothing in return for him. I don't see how that's a negative. Some of your young guys building towards them, that's what the point of 2025 was. So I don't understand how that's a negative. Do you want the Cardinals to be winning? Yeah, absolutely. Everyone wants the Cardinals to be winning. But that doesn't mean that just because they had a phenomenal May doesn't mean that that's what the entire year was going to be. This is a young team, and I think it's not spinning it. It's having realistic expectations of what this team was going to do when you looked at the starting pitching going into the year, when you looked at how much they spent in the offseason, and when you look at how young the offense is. Them staying at this consistent rate all season long was not ever going to be a realistic thing. That's why it has been a riding the wave. It's been a roller coaster, and you've had some really highs in there, right? When you've been excited about what this product can be. You've also had some lows, which you could argue we're in one right now where you're like, geez, this sucks. This is not fun. And I get it. It's not fun, but it's unfortunately what the things that you have to write out with young players.
I'll say this with the sell trade. I mean, the best case scenario is you win this game, you win a couple games against the Rockies, win a few against the Padres. Maybe you're right back to 1.5, 2 games back. I think in that scenario, you should still sell off Helsley, maybe Maton too, and Matz, and find your closer, find your setup man for next year. If he's on the roster, you should find a way to definitely get McGreevy up here. Fetty should be moved maybe into a bullpen role, or you just cut him loose altogether. I don't know whatever they decide to do. He shouldn't be a starter anymore, obviously. McGreevy comes back, Graceffo gets some time, and maybe you start playing well and you find a way to sneak into the playoffs. If not, you're out, and hopefully the youth gets a little more playing time and you got some pieces in return.
Bill commenting saying all free agents walk at the end of the year, so get something, not one getting a qualifying offer. I think trying to say, get something rather than a qualifying offer is what he's trying to say. And I agree. That's the point that I'm at. If you trade off some of those guys and the guys come up and they provide a spark and your team continues winning, then great. You got continued winning from young guys and you got prospects. I mean, that sounds like a win-win to me. So, Aaron brings up an interesting question here, or he doesn't bring up a question. He brings up a statement where he starts off this latest comment, right, with 2025 has been a wasted period. And I don't care about at least the rest of what he said. Besides that, I am excited for JJ Weatherholt and Liam Doyle as well down the line. But as far as 2025, when you look at what this season has been so far, how do you review it? How do you take it? Has it been a success so far based off of what the expectations were? Has it been a failure? How do you review it?
Bang on below average, probably. I mean,
say it again.
Just below average.
Below average. And let me hear your thoughts. Go for it.
The good thing is you got to see some youth. The problem is I still don't know how much we actually saw out of the youth. I mean, granted, there's still 2 months of the season left. Nolan Gorman hasn't got a lot of runway. Jordan Walker's barely played. I think there's still, it feels like more questions than answers, but maybe if this whole season was about the runway, the guys with questions are cut finally, or you cut them loose. You find trade options for Nootbaar, who obviously still has a bunch of questions around him. You trade away Jordan Walker. Obviously Nolan Arenado won't be coming back, but a lot of guys that you had questions about, you didn't get answers for. And I think if you're still without answers, I don't know if you'll ever find them. You found an answer on Ivan Herrera. He'll be a very good piece moving forward for you. You still don't really know who your catcher is, so that's another question. So I just think in this season, there's a lot more questions than answers. I think if you look at what your win total probably will be, it probably will exceed expectations or be bang on expectations. But as far as how they've gotten there, I still think it's a little disappointing.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think in large part based off of the expectations that they set. Now you could argue, and this was a huge mistake by John Mozeliak, in my personal opinion. When Mozeliak initially set the expectation that this was going to be a year that young guys played, I think that made it pretty clear, right? That obviously you're still going to try to win games, but the goal is going to be in large part to figure out, what your young talent is and who is going to be a guy for you down the line. And then Mozeliak with Arenado staying and with them not being able to find a trade partner starts to go on this. I think we can win some ball games. And to be fair, up to a couple of days ago, if you're 51-46, you're 2.5 games out of the wild card spot, you're still in the mix. Like, it's still not a crazy thing to say, right? But it tampered expectations in the sense that you had this one thing you were expecting going in, and then you hear this other thing, and then they remain in the mix for March and April, and then in May they have this dominant month, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this team's a playoff team. So the Cardinals front office kind of set up fans to be extremely disappointed with the product here in the months of June and July because of the way I think that the messaging was kind of sent out to fans. So I wasn't a fan of that. But if you're looking based off of what the initial expectation was for this team, when you looked at how young they were, how bad a lot of the starting pitching had been coming into this year, I think that this year's been, in a lot of ways, pretty successful, at least at the middle. I mean, just a couple of days ago when I reviewed the All-Star break, I said it was a B minus, and I would still stick around that. 2 bad games to start off the second half is not changing that for me, because look at what you have found in some of these guys youth-wise, and this is what you needed to do. This was what the season was all about, figuring out what you had in some of these young guys. I think they know what they have in Alec Burleson. I think they've kind of figured out what they have in Lars Nootbaar. Nolan Gorman, I think, early in the year, he was getting limited in his ABs, but he's played pretty consistently when healthy the last couple of months, and he's been pretty decent. Continuing through the list here, obviously, you know what you have in Brendan Donovan, a guy that there's no reason he shouldn't get a contract extension this upcoming offseason. You found what you have in Ivan Herrera. We already knew, I think, what you had in Mason Wynn. I think Pedro Pajes has been great behind the plate. There's a lot of greenery when it comes to Victor Scott and the potential for him in center field. We know what he can be defensively. You start to get him on base a little bit more than he is a run-scoring threat. So offensively, I think they figured out a lot this year, and there's a lot of encouraging signs. And here's the thing, is that I know there's been some people saying trade Mozo to Clown commenting saying trade Helsley, Nootbaar, Gray, and Fetty if you can. So I'll go quickly through these. I think Helsley's becoming more and more realistic by the day. Nootbaar, I think wouldn't surprise me, is on the list at some point. I just don't know if you're going to trade him this deadline because of you got 2 guys at the helm basically right now, and the one that's leaving is the one that makes the final call. So I don't know if they're going to trade off Nootbaar at this deadline. I don't know if Heimblum would want to, because he doesn't get the full say of what he gets back. Sonny Gray has a full no trade clause. Maybe he would consider it again at this point, but when you asked him this past offseason, he seemed pretty set in that he wanted to stay in St. Louis. And then Eric Fetty, I don't know what his value is at this point. But I say all that to say that Nootbaar was brought up, and a couple of other people have brought up Lars Nootbaar. Lars Nootbaar, I think, is a guy that could realistically get traded this offseason. I just don't know when you look at the other guys around him. Alec Burleson has played better than him. Brendan Donovan, if he's going to be a corner outfielder, has played better than him. And there's probably still some demand out there for Lars Nootbaar around the league. So he's a guy that I would expect to probably get traded. Nolan Gorman's another one I think could potentially get traded. I say all of this to say you found out a lot about, I think, your offense this year, and I think that's a good thing.
That's fair.
Pitching-wise, that's where you still have some question marks about what is Michael McGreevy. We haven't seen him get a lot of opportunities yet. You still want to see him get some more chances, and there's some guys that just aren't ready yet. Quinn Matthews is not ready. Cole Roby is not ready. Liam Doyle still a little ways away, obviously. So I think there is some encouragement, but they're not quite there yet. Aaron graded this season a D at best. I don't know how you can give it that low of a score when you look at what the expectations were going in. If the goal is that you're looking at 2025 and you're saying it's a year where you expect to win the World Series, then yeah, I would give it a D as well. But that wasn't the expectation going in. So I don't know, and I don't know how. And I know some Cardinal fans out there saying the expectation should be to win a World Series every year. I agree. That should be the expectation in St. Louis. It hasn't been this year. And going in, if you are thought that this team should be in the mix for the World Series, then I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're not thinking with your brain, that's for sure. So, it's been frustrating here these last couple of days. Hopefully the Cardinals are able to at least salvage a game today in this series and like you said, move in the right direction. But
Yeah.
regardless, I don't know how realistic it is. No matter what you do these next few games, I don't know how realistic it is, or let me say this: I don't know if it would make much sense to me for the Cardinals to not sell based off of what you've seen these last couple of days against a team that you needed to win a couple of ball games against, and they have just looked absolutely terrible. So maybe you're able to win a couple against San Diego and get yourself a little bit more in the mix. But if it's me, I'm selling your back end three pieces all day long.
This comment from Adam Well is kind of how I feel. The worst part, or it's weird, they are better than they're supposed to be, but they are worse than they should be. And they aren't actually super young is the thing as well. I agree. You have an older third baseman, older first baseman, left fielder that's a little older, a second baseman who's approaching 30. Like there's a couple young pieces, but as a whole, they aren't super inexperienced. But I agree with your point, Ethan, that the youth has gotten to play. It just would feel better if there was 5 to 6, 7 guys that played every game.
So hold on. So point it out again. Point out the guys that aren't necessarily young again to me again.
Arenado.
Okay, sure.
Obviously. Wilson Contreras, obviously.
Yes.
Lars Nootbaar is a veteran. I mean, he's 28. I mean, he's not old, but he's not young. He's at a place where he should be developed. They're developed.
Yeah, sure.
Brendan
Okay, he's still considered a version of that youth. He's not to the extent of.
No, he's not youth.
He's an extent of it. He's not to the fullest extent of Ivan Herrera or some of these guys that are, or Victor Scott. But like, if you look based off of, he hasn't played a full healthy season. He's been up for 4 years, but he still hasn't played a full healthy year. So in that sense, you're still trying to figure out what he is. Like this was a year just as much for him to figure out what you have in him, so you can either roll with him or move out from him as any of these other guys.
Yeah, but he's 28 in a month and a half. I don't think that 28 in the MLB is any more where you're still youthful. But I'm not going to say he's over the hill. Like, he still has, you would think, 4 or 5 good years left in him. Donovan's almost 30. Like, I think that's the only frustrating part, is that you still have question marks around a guy like Lars Nootbaar, who's going to be 28 years old. He should be developed by now. I think that's.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that necessarily, but like it's. I mean, that's one of the things that's why I'm mentioning that, like, you should trade Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah,
that's why I would argue that he's one of the guys that you should move on from. But like, there's still enough. There's still enough to have a in large part full lineup that's full of guys that are young, and you know what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying, even with moving on from him, there's still guys that I feel like you could pick out and say, yeah, these are the guys that I feel like you can build your future around. Because when Lars Nootbaar goes, like, that moves up a spot for Brendan Donovan maybe to move out to left field, and for guess who's going to take over second base eventually? JJ Weatherholt. So you get younger, right? So I mean, like, there's still a lot of youth. It's not really based around what you have right now.
Yes, I agree with you. But I think that's where some frustration comes in. Also, to Adam's point that I wanted to get into is that it's a weird feeling because they're better than what you thought they should be in February and March, but the way they played, they're not as good as they should be. They blow games, they lose in dumb ways. Like, it's just, they could easily be 5 games better than they are right now. And I think that's the frustration.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like you said, that's kind of what you get with a young team. That's just kind of the unfortunate reality of playing with a lot of guys that are young. And I know there's a few games in there that Helsley's blown. I think he's blown 5 this year. So there's a few that you probably could have had back if you have a better version of him. So no, I don't disagree with that last point. It's just unfortunately kind of what you get with playing with the youth that you have.
But I think the argument too is I don't know how much youth there really is. I mean,
we just talked about there's still a bunch of youth.
But you're talking about youth that's in the rotation that will be called up with Weatherholt and guys in AAA. I don't know how much youth there really is on this MLB roster that shouldn't already by now be consistent. Like, guys that I would give exemptions to would be Victor Scott, Mason Wynn, who, I mean, is proved obviously that he's found it, and I mean, maybe Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker, but those guys don't play every day. So if your everyday starters, guys that I would...
Alec Burleson? Would you give it to Alec Burleson?
I mean, well, I would say he doesn't need it. He's performed well enough.
Yeah, but at the beginning of the year, you would have given it to him. He's
probably
his age and development doesn't change just because.
No. So I would say 3 consistent guys that I would classify as young and inexperienced. Everyone else that has played regularly and started regularly are veterans at this point.
I wouldn't go that far, right? I think it's more so. I think you're having to define like how you view youth, right? Are you viewing it solely by age, or are you viewing it by development and how much time they've had in the league as well? Because that's a part of it as well.
Totally age. Inexperience, I think.
I don't agree with that. I wouldn't put youth fully on age, because whether you're 26 or you're 23 or 20, whether you're 26 or 23 doesn't change, right? That some guys are going through the same amount of time at the major league level. That's where I would disagree with that.
But I'm trying to find Lars Nootbaar's baseball reference here. I don't know if you would call his now 5th year in the MLB, where he's played at least 100 games, will be in 4 of them totally inexperienced. Like,
no, I'm not saying he's totally inexperienced. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is the year, right, where you went in. You said, just like a lot of these guys, you have to figure out if he's going to be a guy that you're cemented in for the future or not, because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. You've seen it in bits and pieces, but you haven't seen it for a full 162. That's what I was saying for Nootbaar. I'm not putting him in the same category as Victor Scott II as far as age and inexperience. I'm just saying there's still things to take from him this year as well. Yeah, would you like to know what you have in him? No, I do agree with that. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and it's kind of become one of the calling cards of his career. So I think in large part there still is a lot of youth, and there's pieces that you're going to build from. And even with the eventual moving on of some of those veterans or guys that have been around a little bit more, like, that's to make room for more young guys that you have coming up. So that's the point that I was trying. That's the point that I was trying to make.
No, I agree with that. I just think for the frustration is with the actual team that you have now is that there's not a ton of youth that's playing every day, and they're still playing like they're just so inconsistent.
There's been a lot of inconsistency on this team. There's no doubt about that. And it's been a rough couple of days to start off the season for the Cardinals. The second half for the Cardinals. So fans are frustrated, and they have good reason to be. So let's hope that things at least a little bit move in the right direction today, that Miles Mikolas is able to have a better outing, and that you're able to salvage a game from this series. We'll see what happens. We will have post-game coverage, and I believe Grant will be on it here later this afternoon. 3:15 first pitch against the Arizona Diamondbacks out in the desert. Miles Mikolas against Merrill Kelly. He is Grant Salsman. I am Ethan Hannaford. This has been Card Central 365 on STL Sports Central.